Hello, Wanderers. Welcome back to our Crusader Kings 3 roleplay series set in the Game of Thrones mod and following Robert Baratheon after he lost the war and went into exile here in Essos. And I know I spent a lot of time in that last episode, the entire episode, explaining the events that occurred that changed this timeline and the scenario that we find ourselves in. And I don't want to delay too much from getting into the actual gameplay here, but there is one thing that came up in the comments a lot in that last episode that I do want to just kind of explain my thoughts on, and that is as it relates to Jon Snow, or in this timeline as he is known as Aegon Sand. Now, I wanted to explain partially how I think that this whole event around Aegon here, or Jon Snow, we'll call him Jon Snow just because that's what you're familiar with. I just wanted to explain quickly how I think that that would play out and what I think the situation with him is. And then also why I chose the name for him, Aegon. I'll explain the first one, or that point first. I went with the name Aegon because there is some reason to believe that Jon would have been named Aegon if he hadn't been taken by Ned and then named Jon. Obviously, in this scenario, that doesn't make sense. Ned, when he took Jon with him, changed his name from whatever Lyanna had named him. We don't know canonically in the books what Lyanna had named him, but we know that Ned changed the name to Jon in order to presumably protect him. And that name was chosen based off of Jon Arryn, who had been the one who had raised Ned as his mentor in the Vale. So we don't necessarily know what Jon's original name is, but there is reason to suspect that it may have been Aegon. And that is for two reasons. One, it is said that that was his name in the show. So we do have show confirmation for that. That was in season 7. We all know that there were a lot of changes in this show in that season, and there's a lot of speculation about why they chose the name Aegon, etc. I do suspect that Jon's name may end up being Aegon in the books, his original name, the one that Lyanna gave him. And there is some reason to suspect that. Now, we know that Lyanna, when she died at the Tower of Joy, we can presume that she was aware of Rhaegar's death, because we know that the Kingsguard who were guarding her were aware of it. There is a quote to confirm that. However, it is, like I said, it's not confirmed in the books what she named the child, what name she would have given him. But there's a lot of speculation, and there's some quotes and reason to believe that he would have been named Aegon in the books as well. Now, the one kind of sticking point with that is that Rhaegar already has a son named Aegon, and he named his son here Aegon because, naming him after Aegon the Conqueror, he thought that this kid was the prince that was promised. This was after a comet flew over King's Landing on his birth. That's why he also has an elder sister named Princess Rhaenys. Presumably, if Rhaegar had had another daughter, that daughter would have been named Visenya to kind of complete the trio of the conquerors, Aegon and his sisters. But obviously, we know that canonically, Rhaenys and Aegon were killed by Rhaegar Clegane, and so they were dead by the time that Lyanna had her child. So some people suspect that Lyanna named the child knowing that this Prince Aegon was dead. And so, she, and knowing that Rhaegar, wanted to have the son that was named Aegon, because Rhaegar was a big believer in the prophecy of the prince that was promised. And he suspected that his son was going to be the prince that was promised. He thought it maybe was this one, perhaps that he thought it was going to be the child of him and Lyanna, though I think he suspected that he was going to have a girl with Lyanna and would have been named Visenya. But anyways, long story short, I think that there is the most reason for us to believe that Jon would have been named Aegon. The only kind of weird thing here is that Rhaegar already has a son named Aegon, but you have to think about it from Lyanna's perspective. Lyanna doesn't have a son named Aegon. She has, no reason to, she doesn't have that same connection. She knows that her, husband or her, obviously we can maybe suspect that, the secret marriage between Rhaegar and Lyanna still happened. Regardless, she presumably knows that Rhaegar favors the name Aegon. And so I went with that one because, for lack of a better idea, the only speculation, or the only like real kind of confirmed speculation that we have, is that Aegon or Jon would have been named Aegon. We don't really have any concrete, evidence for any other names, other than just people suspecting things like Aemon or, various things like that. But there's nothing confirmed. However, there is like at least some evidence that points to the name Aegon. And so that's why I went with that. Now, considering the situation surrounding him, I just wanted to explain a little bit of that really quickly as well. Mainly in the sense that we do know that Aegon here is not known yet as the son of Rhaegar. He's obviously, his parentage is being kept secret, because of, the fact that Aerys is still on the throne. Rhaegar has good reason to suspect that his father is, well, he knows that his father is completely mad. And so he doesn't know what his father would do if the child were to be made known. So he's kept it secret. Rhaegar knows that Aegon is his son, but he has not acknowledged him as his son. And so he sent him down here with Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, to be fostered with Ashara Dayne, Arthur's sister. However, Arthur has been named the Lord Commander after the death of Gerald Hightower. And so he had to return. Obviously, Rhaegar couldn't just leave one of the Kingsguard down here to, for no reason. Presumably, Aerys would be a little bit suspicious of why one of the Kingsguard is down in Dorne for no reason. So he had to withdraw the Kingsguard. But who does he send down to protect him? Well, he sends none other than perhaps the person that he can trust the most, and that is Sir Jon Connington. Now, Jon Connington was sent into exile after his failure at the Battle of the Bells, which still happened in this timeline. However, Rhaegar, upon waking from his coma, got word to Jon and asked him to go to Starfall to watch over his son. And so Jon here is the protector of Aegon Sand, or Jon Snow, essentially. So we've got, it's interesting that we've got Jon Connington as the, as essentially playing the role of Ned in this scenario. And I think that that is really cool. And then, still that connection to Ashara Dayne. I personally suspect in this scenario that perhaps Ashara Dayne may be, there might be some speculation that, Aegon is the child of Ned Stark and Ashara. There's like all this speculation that they fell in love and that, he may have sullied her honor during the tourney at Harrenhal, all these kind of things. So, and the fact that he's, looks like a Stark, he's got that Stark blood. My personal canon, at least in this scenario, is that people think that Aegon is Ashara Dayne's bastard child with Ned Stark, and maybe she doesn't say anything to dissuade them on that. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. But regardless, that is not necessarily important for Robert's story. Robert the usurper, or, the would-be usurper, I think he's kind of known mockingly as the usurper here, finds himself in Pentos, where he has been drinking, he has been whoring, and he has been languishing in, probably shame and misery since what happened. We can probably presume that he has learned of Lyanna's death. He doesn't know that she was in love with Rhaegar. To Robert, he would suspect that Lyanna was taken by Rhaegar, that she was, that Rhaegar took advantage of her, put his child in her. The child or presumably, you know, well, maybe they don't necessarily know that, but they know that she died at the very least. So yeah, the Robert would have even more reason to hate Rhaegar, knowing that Lyanna died within essentially after he kidnapped her. There's no reason for Robert to think that that was not the case. So he would absolutely have even more reason to despise the Targaryens in this scenario. However, he failed to do anything about it, and now his love is dead, and he finds himself here. So what are we going to do from there? I have gone and also added Mia Stone to our camp. And that is simply because, as some people pointed out, Robert actually liked Mia, his young daughter. He kind of stopped paying attention to her once he became king. But before that, he actually kind of favored the child, and he had like a kind of a little bit of a relationship with her while she was in the Vale. And so, considering the fact that he fled from the Vale, after that point, I thought it would make sense. It says she's up here, but she's technically in our camp. I thought it would make sense that Robert may have brought her with him, especially if her mother had died. So yeah, we've got her in the camp with us. And some people pointed out that maybe we could arrange a marriage for her and Robb, which would be kind of cool. We know that Robert did want to, marry his family into Ned's. But, that's not something we have to worry about now. What do we have to worry about? Well, we have to worry about what Robert is going to do in the wake of his failure. And so we know that he's been drinking, he's been whoring, he's probably been living off of the generosity, shall we say, of the Prince of Pentos here. But the Prince of Pentos is a greedy man, and we can't live off the generosity of a greedy man for long, because he is going to call in his debts, and he is probably going to call in those debts now that he is in a war with some Braavosi lords here. And so we are going to offer him military assistance, and we are going to join in this war here. Now, we do have a few knights and some soldiers who came with us. Not very many, about 120. And those are all, that's all that's left of Robert's army that made it here to Pentos. 120 men, 20 knights, and 100 footmen, basically. And then we've got all of our followers here. I went over some of them in the last episode, but, we've got some knights here with us, such as the Hammer and the Anvil of House Morrigan. We've got this Northerner who came with Ned, which is this Arthur Greeneye here. Says he can see the future with his green sight, but nobody necessarily believes him. Then we've got some other warriors here, such as Sir Andrew Kellington, a Stormlander, loyal man, wounded from some of the battles that we fought, but he has come here along with us. And there are probably going to be other disaffected lords who might make their way once they hear that Robert is alive in Essos. So in any case, we are going to join this war. We're also seducing a woman because we are Robert Baratheon. So we're seducing this Orcilia here. She's, an attractive looking young woman here who Robert seems to have caught some fancy of. So we're going to join this war here, because we do need to pay our debts to the Prince of Pentos. And so that is exactly what we're going to do. Looks like they are successful in this battle here, which is good. We're going to quickly try to make our way in, put on our helmet, prepare for battle here. Let's see if we can engage the enemy here. I guess we'll go and we'll join the army, because I don't think our 120 troops are going to be able to defeat the enemy there. So already at 50% war score. So hopefully we'll get into at least one battle here that we can participate in. I'm just going to chain myself to the Pentosi army so that we can engage in some battles there. So yeah, Robert is, these debts are being called upon. Robert probably doesn't yet see himself. He doesn't see himself as a mercenary at this point, but he does, need to pay back the favors that the Prince of Pentos has, been building up against us. And, people like, Brynden and Ned Stark and, guys like that aren't going to be too happy if we just, refuse this situation. It'd be kind of dishonorable. And so, they might balk as well at acting as mercenaries, but we don't really have any other choice. And so, we're kind of put into a really interesting position in that we find ourselves, we are a lord. We were the lord of the Stormlands, but now we're in exile. We're living off the generosity of others, and that kind of forces us into this uncomfortable situation where our own nobility is kind of called into question when the Prince of Pentos says, well, I need you to fight for me. Like he's basically calling in this debt that we have building up by staying in Pentos this whole time. And he says, well, I need you to fight for me. We could refuse, sure. We're not a mercenary, but do we really have that choice? Not necessarily. I'm going to grab the warrior here as our patron. We don't necessarily have a choice here. It's either that or we leave Pentos and we basically, make another enemy here. So the practical thing to do, and, probably what we would be advised to do, is going to be to honor the debt that we owe. It's interesting to think, somebody like Ned Stark would have qualms against acting as a mercenary, certainly. But, Brynden Tully feels like maybe a little bit more of a practical kind of person. We've got Davos here, who, Davos is a very practical person. These are some of the people we listen to. Stannis, of course. Stannis is here. Stannis is, well, Stannis is Stannis. I don't know if he would be too pleased at the idea of acting as a mercenary, but yeah, I mean, do we really, how much choice do we have? And can we afford to make more enemies? I think that's where the important point comes in. Can we afford to anger the Prince of Pentos? And I don't think we can. And so that's why I think that we reluctantly, in this case, are acting essentially as mercenaries here in this battle. And Robert Baratheon is leading the army here himself and doing so quite capably, as we can see here, crushing the enemy army there. Nice. We led the charge in battle and displayed remarkable prowess. I think we absolutely annihilated the enemy army here. Let's take a look at that. Oh, great. Yeah, -8 losses. Ugh. Oh, landless characters. You know how it is. In any case, any interesting events here? We captured Magister Morisano, which is ideal. Too bad we didn't capture him. We could have got that ransom, but yeah, I mean, it is understandable, right, that we would be reluctant to, provide our services in this way as mercenaries. But yeah, it's difficult to assume that, it's difficult to imagine that we would have much other choice. You were not paid by Prince Yoro for contract assistance as your war contribution was less. What? Wow. And so now, you know what? Maybe that's because we come expecting some reward from Prince Yoro, but the greedy bastard basically just says, oh, but haven't I been hosting you this whole time? Haven't I been feeding you and your men, providing you places to sleep and, ale to drink? And you have been, making use of my hospitality, and now you expect more money from me for a simple favor. And he refuses to pay us. And I think that is, you know, that's a big spit in the face, especially considering that we basically, you know, put aside our morals. Maybe not our morals. We are a warrior. We are expecting to be warrior. But, you know, acting as a mercenary kind of goes against our nobility more so. And then being, you know, and not having this, I think that is, you know, quite the spit in our face. And so I think that we are going to get ourselves out of Pentos because, yeah, I don't think that Robert is going to be too pleased with that. And I think that it's about time that we leave the generosity, in quotation marks, of Prince Yoros here. And where do we go from here? I mean, there's a couple different places. We could go up to Braavos. Braavos would have some interesting possibilities here. I do like Braavos. I wonder if Syrio Forel exists. Maybe he's in the court of this guy here. Let's see if we can find Syrio. Here he is. Yeah, he is in here. Syrio Forel. Nice. It would be cool to get him in our court, wouldn't it? I wonder, do we go to Braavos? Braavos is an interesting place. But, you know, we could go to Mir as well. Mir is a possibility. Tyrosh. You know, I think we might make our way down to the Three Daughters at some point here, but I think I'm more tempted to head up to Braavos first. You know, the Iron Bank is here. Maybe Robert thinks that he can possibly... Ooh, we're going to suffer some food loss here. So maybe we want to grab a little food while we're in the city. We don't have a lot of money, though. Let's see if we can get some food, just barely enough. Yeah, let's head over to Pentos or Braavos and see if we can potentially get ourselves some money here. There is some dangers. Oh, sea danger. Our experienced captains. That does reduce the danger. So yeah, let's get some captains here. It's going to cost most of our money, but we don't really have a lot of choice. So let us set sail here. We've got a captain here, Sarala. Unfortunately, we're leaving, so I don't think that we're going to be able to seduce this woman anymore. So we'll head out. Maria and Andrew, this is the wife of Davos, seem to be having a little bit of a friendship. I think we'll just say good for them. Try to break them apart. Whatever, I don't think we mind, but I feel a little bad for Davos. You know, his wife is becoming best friends with a handsome, young, and very single knight. Well, I guess we'll see what develops out of that anyways. But yeah, we're going to head to Braavos here. Maybe we can somehow get ourselves a loan from the Iron Bank. Oh, looks like there's a war going on. Defending against Prince Rhaegar of the Iron Throne in the war against the tyranny. Oh, Rhaegar launched his war. Ooh. And the Westerlands joined. No, the Westerlands stayed neutral? Who is joining Rhaegar? Not that many, it looks like. You know, actually a decent amount. He's got 60,000. Oh, but of course the Tyrells here. Oh, yeah, the Tyrells join. Oh, boy. But Tarly's fighting with them. Who joined in? Ooh, the North. The North stayed neutral. Interesting. Who does Rhaegar got? Just a lot of small lords. Huh, I'm surprised that there's not more people backing Rhaegar. Oh, he's got this amazing sword here. I'm surprised there's not more people backing Rhaegar, but maybe people are just too afraid of Aerys. I mean, he did beat Robert. You know, Rhaegar, you know, maimed in that battle, and now there's a war between the Targaryens. I can understand why people might want to stay out of it. You know, the Tyrells have been rewarded by Ares, they might, be a little bit hesitant to back, to go against him. They might, I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting situation. I would have thought more would be backing. What's Dorne doing in this? Dorne is, ooh, you know what? I bet you Dorne is going against Rhaegar because, maybe Elia is still a hostage. I know it says she's in the court of Rhaegar, but typically she starts out as a hostage of Ares. And so I wonder if Elia is just kind of maybe, I'm just trying to explain the reason why, people wouldn't be backing him. That Elia is still a hostage. And so Dorne is too worried about that to go against them. Because otherwise they would probably be backing Rhaegar. So Elia's fate must be the reason that they're backing Ares. And then, yeah, a lot of these guys were rewarded by Ares, right? How's Derry? How's Grafton? They were all rewarded by them. What is the Iron Islands doing? Iron Islands staying neutral. Yeah. So we've got a few of the... attacking King Ares. Oh, wait. Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah, okay. So a few of these are attacking King Ares. So yeah, it makes sense that a few of these lords are backing him. But yeah, I'm surprised that that Rhaegar doesn't get more support in this scenario. But I think that people are just terrified of Ares. And one thing to consider as well is that Ares might have like a lot of hostages at this point. Who knows if he's got like some Tyrells in his courts. We know that he's probably got some, that he might have Elia in his court. He might have some lords from these various places as hostages, essentially, after the war. And so there's a lot of lords and families and houses that might be afraid to go against Ares because he might have all these hostages. I know that's probably, not mechanically speaking, but that's my best explanation for why Rhaegar isn't getting more support here. And so that's an interesting, that is an interesting scenario. Oh man, there's no way we can take advantage of this right now though. Oh, what happened to Garth the Gross son? Was murdered. I bet you, I can guarantee you here that Garth the Growth son was murdered by some Stormland lords. Isn't it cool to imagine that there's like these lords of the Stormlands who are so upset with the Tyrell lord here, especially Garth the Growth, that they end up murdering his son? That is, I think that's super cool, actually. So yeah, very interesting. Oh man, cool scenario. There's a lot of interesting things going on there, but we can't take advantage of this right now because we are not strong enough. We have not had enough chance to build up our power against him. But Rhaegar is, he might, what? Holy crap. Oh, look at this. Oh, man. Huh. That is actually kind of insane. Rhaenys and Aegon executed by the Mad King? What? Okay. I mean, I don't know how to explain that other than that the Mad King is completely mad. He killed his own grandchildren when Rhaegar rose up against him. That is insane. I have to assume that he has Elia as a hostage, just to kind of explain the rest of this. But he has gone completely mad, and that is, wow. Okay. I don't know what to say about that. I think that is one that is extremely crazy and super interesting. I think we're going to get over here to Braavos, but there we go. Okay, so we land in Braavos. I think we got to end the episode here because I really want to hear your guys' comments on this development here and what you guys think. I don't want to change events too much. Like, I'd rather come up with an explanation for why Rhaegar isn't getting more backing than to just go and, manipulate events so that he has more backing. In my opinion, I think it's just the fact that Aerys is so mad and so paranoid. He must have like a plenty of hostages. It's totally reasonable that he might have some Tyrells hostages because, the Tyrells, close ties, he might have some of them in his courts. And, Tywin probably just waiting and seeing what happens here. But yeah, this is really, really interesting. Oh, if the North is free, could we try to get, they're not technically free. Interesting. I am not 100% sure what to do here. So I'm going to leave it to you guys in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of this. Man, Rhaegar, this is going to be interesting. Yeah. Let me know down in the comments below. Like I said, if you guys want to get the save file for this, make sure to join as a member either on YouTube or on Patreon. Join the Discord. I will have the save file in there. But until the next episode, Wanderers, this is getting interesting. I will see you in the next one.